Priya is the head of Dasher research at DoorDash. She is also one of the most methodologically creative researchers I've ever met. This stood out to me from our initial conversation, where she really thinks not only what is the right way to solve a research question, but what is the way to get at the kernel of truth, like that actual real-life research experience, and how do we design the best study around that. So I think that is a particularly important skill for senior plus researchers, but it's even more important today in the age of AI. So please welcome Priya.
Thank you, Colette. Can you guys hear me? Also, Colette, you and I are twinning so well. Did you see that? We're totally twinning, you and I. Hi, everybody. My name is Priya Kothari. I am on the research team at DoorDash. I lead two separate research teams there, the Dasher research team, which is the delivery experience of the experience of the delivery people, and the new verticals research team, which is everything on DoorDash that is not a restaurant order. So groceries, flowers, alcohol, retail, all of that good stuff. OK, when the organizers and I were talking about this talk, it got me thinking that some of the case studies that I was thinking about sharing, they weren't about stumbling upon never heard before type of insights, but they were more about crafting the research method in such a way that you really bring influence and you really bring attention to the insight. And so it felt like it was designing the insight in a very sort of an honest and convincing way. And that's why the talk is called Insights Don't Emerge. They're designed. And that's the slide that was supposed to play with the previous talk. Anyway, I hope you're awake, because I'm not going to be talking about any of sort of the standard research toolkit methods. Instead, I'm going to be giving you two case studies, going to be walking you through two studies where I felt like we used something more than a traditional hybrid quant-qual approach. And we almost invented a research method based on something that we wanted to measure or prove or disprove. And I guess the common through line for my talk and a lot of the other people's talks here this week is that this is where research had to do a little bit more than just research, do some design, do some analytics, even function sort of like a business vertical operator. OK, first study is about the hot bags. These are DoorDash's delivery bags with insulation or lack thereof. That is your lead-in to the entire case study, no insulation. Anyway, one day, a coworker put a meeting like this on some of our calendars. It just said this: my burger is cold. This is true. And when you get a meeting like this, you don't not go to that meeting. So we went to the meeting. He was eating his cold burger. It's 10 o'clock here, but he was in New York, so it was 1 o'clock there. And we got talking about why his burger is cold and why some food, when it's delivered, it kind of misses the mark. It's not that hot or it doesn't feel that fresh. So we said, OK, some people report this through the app, through a metric that DoorDash tracks that's called poor food quality, PFQ. But how big is this problem? So we did customer surveys, learned something alarming, that 1 in 3 customers have experienced poor food quality very recently in the last 30 days. And what is more alarming is what people do after that. Some of them stopped ordering that item. Some of them stopped ordering from that restaurant. And what's worst is about 1/5 of the customers stopped ordering or reduced their ordering on DoorDash overall. Very bad for the business. OK. Heard from customers. We wanted to learn from Dashers, too. So we did some shadowing, did some interviewing, asked Dashers, hey, Dashers, when you guys are delivering, what do you think is most important when you have to deliver with high quality? And they all started pointing to our bags and said, have you looked at the bags that are given to us? And we also looked at social channels, Reddit and Facebook. There were lots of posts like this, Dashers saying the DoorDash bag is very flimsy, or joking about, oh, you don't need to vent the DoorDash bag because the zipper doesn't even go all the way around, stuff like this. OK, also, we spoke with some merchants. We walked in and interviewed merchants and asked them, hey, what do you think is important if your food needs to be transmitted to the customer's house at a really good temperature, good quality? They said, have you seen the bags that your Dashers walk into the store with? OK, so they were also talking about the bags, right? And we knew this little stat, which is about 39% of the merchants don't even offer their full menu on DoorDash. They offer a reduced menu. Why? Because of this precise reason that food doesn't transport well sometimes. Okay, so we had heard from all these different audiences, and we wanted to really see, well, our bags are clearly bad, but how bad are they? And so we thought, well, if we want to find out how bad they're for transportation, there isn't a better way than us actually delivering with those bags. So that is exactly what we did. We collected 9 bags, and we put all of the top bags that Dashers were talking about. We threw some of the DoorDash bags into the mix. Then we went first to a Japanese restaurant. We placed 9 orders of miso soup, put 1 in each bag, shut the bag, drove them back to our office in Sunnyvale, and we had the conference room booked out for the whole day. We had set it up like this. We had Post-its labeled. Each bag went in its right spot, and we got set up for measuring. What were we measuring? We took a food thermometer. We opened one bag, stuck it in the miso soup, recorded the temperature, wiped the thermometer, closed the bag, moved to the next bag, and we did this with all the bags. We also did it 5 minutes after this point, and then we did it 10 minutes after this point because we wanted to sort of run a degradation test and see which bag is able to hold up the temperature better. And we spent about 8 or 10 minutes on the road, by the way, driving the food here, which is about the average time that a Dasher spends on the road. We did this with miso soup. We did this with, we went to McDonald's and got 9 McFlurries. Went to Pizza Hut and got 9 pizzas. There was so much free pizza in the office that day. It was great. That's us measuring the pizza. Okay, this is not fair because I already told you what happens. So no guesses. Okay, so what happened? With McFlurries, the temperature of the McFlurry in the DoorDash bag was the highest. In other words, DoorDash bag was the worst at retaining the temperature of cold and frozen foods. What happened with the soup? The temperature of the soup in the DoorDash bag was the lowest. In other words, the DoorDash bag was the worst at retaining the temperature of hot foods also. So clearly, we had work to do, and we needed to learn how to design a better bag. And so we decided, OK, we need to learn how to design a better bags from the experts who already know how to design a bag. So we reached out to many vendors. These are people who already get hundreds and thousands of bags shipped, manufactured overseas and shipped every year. And we chatted with them a bunch, and we learned about whether we should do black lining or foil lining, how much airspace we should have around the food so the temperature doesn't degrade. Should we do zipper or Velcro? Should we do stitch seams or stuck seams? What is the cross-section of the padding? How thick can the padding be so that you can pack it all in a shipping container and ship it? All of this kind of good stuff. OK, then we got to work. For about a month, we were designing the bags, and we designed the bags based off of the best bag from our initial test. And then about a month later, we had our vendor send us 6 prototypes, 6 samples, and we got to doing the same test again to see which prototype won out. And found a winner eventually a few months down the line. With some of the tariff-related delays and everything, we got our first shipment of 350,000 bags, and now we were ready to ship at scale. So we did this in Florida. We flooded the Tampa market with all the treatment bags, the new bags, and Orlando was our control market, which still had the old bags. And about 6 weeks into experimentation, we saw that the new bags had reduced poor food quality complaints, increased the volume of frozen food orders, lots of positive reviews from Dashers, merchants, lots of great chatter on social, all of that good stuff. This was precisely the kind of data that we needed to go to our CEO, Tony, and say, listen, we need money to change every single bag in the country. He gave us that, and he pushed us to be aggressive on the timeline, which is great. And following the success of these bags, we also kind of increased this initiative. We wanted to, can I see this? Oh, OK. Following the success of this bag, we think that we did a few things right by expanding this initiative. We went through the problem ourselves, right? We were the Dashers. We transported the bags ourselves. We tested the bags. We spoke to experts. We did all of this thing. And when we went to leadership, we did what leadership wants to hear, which is we're not solving just the gear, but we're solving the entire problem of poor food quality. So we expanded this and we said, well, how can we nudge Dashers in-app to remember to put the food in the bag? Because if they have a good bag, but they're not putting the food in the bag, what's the point of that? We will nudge consumers to order from merchants that are close by so that their food will transport better, and we will nudge merchants to use better packaging. So we kind of blew up this initiative, and Colette was talking about influence, and I think that was kind of the key over here, expanding beyond gear to influencing product, multiple different things in product. That is what we thought made this successful. Okay. I will do another case study quickly, which is about drop-off notes. This is also about Dashers delivering food, but this time it is how are Dashers finding the actual door of the customer where they have to deliver. Take a look at Windermere Apartments in Sunnyvale. It's a big multi-unit residential complex. Sometimes they're so big and sprawling, they cover multiple city blocks. And as you can see inside, it has lots of internal navigable roads, and which are not on Google Maps. They don't have directions for how to navigate inside. So what happens is when a consumer writes a note for a Dasher saying how to find their door, these notes can sometimes become very long, convoluted, very complex, 200, 250 characters plus. And people are not the greatest writers, lots of them, so they write very convoluted, long messages for the Dashers. Not messages, but in-app instructions for the Dashers. A lot of our Dashers are ESL Dashers. In San Jose, for example, over 50% Dashers are ESL. So what we started to see in the data is these Dashers would kind of mill around in the geofence of the consumer. They're trying to reach the consumer. They're trying to reach support, trying to find that door. And then ultimately, they would just leave the bag where they think is best. And the consumer says, well, I didn't find the bag. And so the consumer reports never delivered, which is also a metric that we track. And the never delivered at these complicated addresses is about 2 times as high as a standard single-family home. So that was the problem we were dealing with. And so we thought, yes, of course, everyone's not a great writer, but what if we found a great writer who could rewrite these instructions at scale? Ta-da, enter AI. OK, great, we're going to do that. But if we want AI to rewrite these consumer instructions, we had to do some research before. We had to learn from consumers if they thought these instructions were better than what they had originally written, and we had to find out if Dashers would actually be faster. So for the consumer instructions, what we did is we pulled a whole bunch of addresses with these 250+ characters with never delivered at that address. And we layered in some information. We looked at Google Satellite View, Street View, maybe some reviews. And then we fed all of this into 3 different LLMs and told it to rewrite in a better way. And we gave it specific prompts, make it concise and direct. Another prompt would be make it warm and conversational tone. Another prompt would be make a step-by-step guide. And so then we took this to the consumers. Some of these consumers we interviewed, and we said, hey, consumer, these are your original instructions, and this is a different version of your instructions. What do you think? Compare them for us. Is any key information missing? Does one communicate anything more simpler than the other? And ultimately, are Dashers going to find this one or this one easier? And oh, by the way, here are different variations. We didn't tell them at first that these were AI rewritten instructions. Across the board, consumers found the step-by-step AI rewritten instruction significantly better than theirs. And then when we told them it was AI rewritten, no surprise, these consumers were very accepting of AI rewriting their instructions. Keep in mind, though, these are also the consumers who, in the DoorDash app, were already used to AI summarizing reviews for them, making recommendations of where to order from. So they were cool with this. And now we have to move on to Dasher research. So what we did for Dasher research, we found 5 such complicated addresses in the South Bay. And for each address, we got a pair of Dashers. One Dasher, we gave the original instruction, said, go find this customer's house. And the other Dasher, we gave the AI rewritten step-by-step guide and said, go find the customer's house. We timed them both. We did this at different times, but we timed them both. And did this across 5 addresses with 5 different pairs of Dashers. I wouldn't be here if AI instructions had lost, so no guesses. Dashers, on an average, were 46 seconds faster with the AI rewritten instructions. That was great. We were saving a lot of time, right? Obviously, whopping amount of time saved, whopping amount of money saved. And I think this was one of the most straightforward 1.5, 2-page research report to take a research-driven idea and instantly put it on a product roadmap happened within 2 hours, and it's being tested, and it's going really, really great. And I think in hindsight, what made this successful is that the kind of the method we used to draw attention to the insight, like we wanted to reduce Dasher drop-off time, right? So that is exactly what we set out to measure. We set out to measure Dasher drop-off time, and we covered a few things. We made sure customers had vetted these instructions, they were comfortable with AI, and then we essentially designed a nano A/B test, and we were measuring exactly what the larger scale A/B test would measure eventually. So we had done all the base work required so that our product eng partners could then run the full-scale A/B test. OK, I am actually going to skip this, or maybe I'll skip it myself. And as promised, I did not tell you about any standard research toolkit methods, and hopefully this inspires you guys to go craft something on your own to really bring attention to an insight and influence your partners. Thank you. Thanks.
Amazing. I think we have time for one question if you're open to it.
Yeah.
All right, we have one hand raised already.
Thank you so much for the great talk. I've always enjoyed DoorDash here the most, so you're continuing that trend of giving one of the most interesting talks. It's so weird to hear my own voice. My question is, I'm curious about who makes the decisions about what research to pursue. I know some companies have kind of a centralized decision-making that do the prioritizing across the whole company. Some companies have more like individual-led, and I'm just kind of curious how it works at DoorDash.
Yeah, sure. At DoorDash, it's sort of a mix. It doesn't come from leadership. It doesn't come from certain partners. I mean, some of it does, but a lot of it comes from people who are, so there's a value at DoorDash called customer obsessed. Like different companies have different values. One of ours is customer obsessed, and it comes from really wanting to solve the problem for an audience. And so if anybody, literally anybody, any function in the company feels passionate about something, and they can prove that there's a better way to solve, or there is a way to solve that problem, and then kind of what Colette was saying earlier, not just there's a way, if they can prove out that this way is viable and develop sort of momentum behind it, it gets put on the research roadmap. And in these examples, for instance, like people, like in the hot food bags example, people were saying we're reducing ordering from DoorDash. That is the #1 thing we don't want to happen, right? So it was our improvement would directly impact how many customers retain and stay engaged with DoorDash. Or here, it was directly saving money. Every second that a Dasher spends in the geofence is time and money lost. And so it was really easy to make that leap. Like, look, guys, this is the amount of money we're going to save. And so, yeah. And then if it's extensible, if that innovation can then be applied to other scenarios like hotels, universities, this, that. So that was the other way. So yeah, it's kind of democratized. Anyone can make a decision.
Amazing. Huge thank you to Priya.
Thank you.
I told you she was clever.